It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Cameroon. Part 1, the candidates. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode covers Cameroon's players. Just a note on where we're at in our mediacasts, we are publishing previews of the groups and teams of the 2025 African Cup at the same time as this series on the players. Last summer, we previewed the groups, teams, and players for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup, and we also did a mediacast introducing ourselves. After this African Cup, we will tackle the massive 48-team World Cup in the summer of 2026, so we plan to start publishing episodes for that in the springtime of 2026. We're doing this mediacast on the players in two parts. Part 1 here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period and take into account a couple of other factors as well to categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seemingly off the squad. And we'll go into more detail on the players we think likely to reach the final squad and less, perhaps even just the names of players unlikely to get there. Part 2 will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. That will be soon because we're doing Group F here, so we're going to get to that quickly. At that time, we're going to go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode has 3 sections. In section 1, we're going to look at some general information on the team. Section 2 is the main part of the mediacast. We look at the candidates, we look at their likelihood of selection, and we give some career information on the main players there. And in section 3, we're going to summarize and conclude. We'll do a review of what we came up with in section 2, and we'll look at a couple of other matters like injuries to keep an eye on. Let's begin then. We are moving into section 1 here and looking at some general information on Cameroon's squad. So let's do club affiliations. I realized in preparing this that when I did the mediacast for Ivory Coast, I accidentally used the information for Cameroon. I should have realized, but I didn't. So this is a kind of a repeat of what I said in the Ivory Coast mediacast, but it's done in the right place here. This is Cameroon. We're looking at kind of the quality of club teams that the players play for. So we begin with domestic and similar level leagues in Africa. We have about 10% of players there. Colombe Sportif is represented, one of the clubs in Cameroon, and also a club in Congo DR there. So all of these examples are examples of the teams, they're real teams that the players play for. So 10%, we'll review the numbers at the end here. Outside of Africa and Europe, it's about 15%. We have players in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and China. And then 4 players playing in the USA there. Next, we move on to kind of smaller clubs in Europe, and that makes up the bulk of it here at 45%. So we have 2 kinds of players here, either in lower tier European leagues like Norway, Romania, and Russia. Or they may be bottom half teams in some of the bigger leagues like Italy and France. So we have the teams Verona in Italy, I think 2 players for Lorient in France, and Dinamo Bucharest, a fairly big team there. Mid-sized clubs in Europe make up about 25% of the squad. And solid European teams there, or those in the continental competitions there. For example, Brighton, Brest, that's Stade Brest in France, Osasuna. Sorry, my body took complete control of me there. Um, or Reims in France. So France represented quite a bit here. And then we have about 7%. I try to round out these figures, but 5 is too low and 10 is too high. So I got to go with 7%. Those would be top clubs in Europe. Such as Manchester United, Napoli, and Bayer Leverkusen. Okay, let's review the numbers. So domestic and similar level leagues, about 10%. Outside of Africa and Europe, 15%. Small clubs, small clubs in Europe, 45%. Mid-sized clubs in Europe, 25%. And top clubs, 7% there. So, yeah, those numbers aren't precise, but giving you an idea. And actually, you know, this is better done in comparison with other teams in the group. I'd say it's comparable to Ivory Coast there, but then if we compare it to Gabon and Mozambique, we'd see that they have a lot more players playing in Europe and for bigger clubs. Okay, let's move on to recent games for Cameroon. So we're looking at the games in the build-up to the Cup. And that is from after the 2023 African Cup played in January of 2024. So we will start our narrative with the games of the African Cup there, but they don't make up the participation count, which goes from March 2024 to October 2025. That's what we did our research and preparation on. That's where we go to. So let's take a look at those games. We have the 2023 African Cup then in January of 2024. And then we have a manager change after that tournament, after the 4 games of that tournament. So going into the March games, it is under a new manager. We'll cover that at the beginning of section 2. No games in March of 2024. Most teams played a couple of friendlies there, but not Cameroon. So really the new manager's journey begins with 2 World Cup qualifying games in June of 2024. And then in September to November, we have 6 games for African Cup qualifying. That is completes the beginning and end of African Cup qualifying with those 6 games. In March of 2025, we come back to World Cup qualifying with 2 games there. No official games scheduled for June 2025. We have 2 friendlies there. And Cameroon used these games for, I would say, B team / experimental games. So we really don't get the starting players there, but we get a rash of less familiar players. Moving into the fall of 2025, we have the final games of 2026 World Cup qualifying, 4 games there in September and October. Well, actually for Cameroon, it's not the final games because they did advance to the playoffs, which were played in November 2025. But we do not, well, I'll put that on the list here in red because we are not going to cover that in this one. We're going to do that in part 2. We'll focus on that game. And I should tell you, there's a new manager coming in after that game. So right before the Cup here, a new manager coming in. Again, we'll cover that at the beginning of section 2. Let's look at their formations over the period. And in no great detail, we'll just give a kind of a summary of it. And what we have here is a 4-5-1 formation in 50% of the games, in half of the games. So that's their favorite formation over this period. And The other 8 games consisted of 4 different formations. 3 of them were the 4-2-3-1, which is not that different from a 4-5-1. There we have it. So maybe keep that image of the 4-5-1 in mind as we go through. And we'll look at a couple of patterns here. Overall, over their 16 games, we have a 2-man central defense in 15 of the games. So just one time did they use a 3-man central defense. And then we have a single forward in 87% of the games. And a 2-man forward line in 13%. So that is 16 games, 16 of the 18 games, a single forward, and just 2 of them a 2-man forward line. We'll look at the midfield in more detail when we get there in section 2. But that is almost the end of section 1. We're just going to look at upcoming games. Well, they're not really upcoming because these games have been played already. Or I should say this game, because it's just the one. They were hoping for 2 games. It's the World Cup playoffs there, and it is the semi-final against Congo DR. They lost 1-0 on a late goal. So, of course, they were hoping to, that was the semi-final game, hoping to get to the final game for the region, but didn't make it. So just the one game there. And we were hoping for a couple of, friendlies in the lead up to the Cup so that we can look at the lineup. In truth, we're not really that interested in the results there. We're greedy to look at the lineups, but that's all we get for Cameroon. However, the good news is that, of course, they fielded their best team for that, so we can assume it's going to be similar to the starting lineup. Well, I say that, but it might be completely different under the new manager, and that actually brings us nicely into section 2, our look at the candidates here, because we begin with the manager situation here. So let us take a look. We're going to kind of populate the list with the names to begin with. So going into the Cup here, they are going to be going in with David Pagu. His name is in orange because kind of new to the team. He came in on December 1st, 2025 there. Next we have Mark Breeze, the outgoing manager there. His name is in light grey, indicating that he has not been through a tournament. And then we have, as part of our narrative, Rigobert Song, who we'll begin the narrative with. His name is in black script, indicating that he has been through a major tournament as a manager. So let's go to the narrative on the position then. And Rigobert Song had come in after the 2021 African Cup there, played in January of 2022. Cameroon had finished 3rd in that tournament, but since they were hosts of it, that was a bit of a disappointing result. So they got rid of the manager and brought in Rigobert Song, a famous former player. Under Song, they immediately met with success, beating Algeria in a playoff to qualify for the 2022 World Cup. And then in the tournament itself, they didn't pass the group stage, but they did have the glory of beating Brazil 1-0 in the tournament. So Song kept his job. After that, he also went on to lead them through qualifying for and to the 2023 African Cup that played in January of 2024. They were knocked out there by Nigeria in the round of 16. So the end result, round of 16, was a bit disappointing. But if you look at the situation, they were kind of unfortunate to have such a tough opponent in the round of 16. And you might say, well, that's because they went and finished second instead of first in the group. But in the group stage, they had a tough opponent also in Senegal. So I really don't blame Cameroon much for losing to those two teams. Nevertheless, the FA was disappointed with the result and did not renew Song's contract in February 2024. So he is out of the picture and now manager of Central African Republic's national team. That's where Rigobert Song went. The replacing manager is a Belgian manager, Mark Bries. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, to be honest. It's Brys, so it could be Bries or Breeze. I'm going to say Breeze. Was brought in then, and he managed them through qualification for this African Cup, the 2025 African Cup, and also qualification for the 2026 World Cup. Both were actually quite successful. They were undefeated in 2025 African Cup qualification, and they reached this tournament comfortably. 2 road ties in that campaign over their 3 away games did not trouble them there, but a weak record on the road in World Cup qualifying did see them finish second to a more consistent Cape Verde. There. However, they did earn enough points with their second place finish in the group to reach a playoff. But as we saw in Section 1, they were knocked out in the semi-final stage by Congo DR. Breeze was fired over that result just a month before the start of this African Cup. And I read that there were political problems within the system there. David Pagu was brought in quickly. He is a local manager, so he knows the situation within Cameroon well, and he has a reputation for discipline. So he's being really brought in to restore order within a fractured system among the players, the FA, and the government there. And so it's expected that maybe a few heads will roll, since that's his main task. And we did see signs of that fracturing before. We were a bit doubtful about Rigobert Song going into the last cup, whether he would keep his job, and then kind of famous disagreements between Andre Onana, the goalkeeper, and Rigobert Song about kind of tactics and stuff. So it has been in the air, and I guess causing problems. So there we have it, David Pagu leading them into this cup. Let's take a look at him. He's been manager of Cameroon then since December 2025. Prior to that, or actually even still, it seems, he's manager of one of the biggest clubs in Cameroon, Coton Sport, there, and he has managed a few clubs in Cameroon, but really at this level, not a lot of experience. As I say, really brought in to steady the political ship there. Okay, and we won't go into detail on Mark Bries or Rigobert Song, so let's move on to the first player position, goalkeepers, and we'll begin by populating the list, so let you know who the cast of characters are, and then we'll take a look at the narrative and then come back and look in more detail, especially at the main players. So as a definite candidate, we have Simon Omosola. At the also definite level, we have Andre Onana. And then at the possible level, we have Davis Ipasi. And also at the possible level, Simon Ngap Anduetenbu. Seemingly off the squad is Fabrice Ondoa, which may come as a bit of a surprise to people. All right, let's look at the summary of the position there. So going into the previous cup, we did a media cast and we were undecided in our prediction for the starting keeper there. We thought it'll be either Andre Onana or Fabrice Ondoa, one or the other, or perhaps a rotation of the two. And it turned out to be, Ondoa in games 1, 3, and 4, and Onana in game 2. But part of the reason for that was that Onana arrived late. He was having travel problems and arrived late, so wasn't there for game one. So he might have been the starter had he arrived on time. Anyway, over the period and under the new manager, Mark Brees, Ondoa was never called up. Onana was the clear number one. The June friendlies in 2025, those experimental matches were the only games he didn't start. It was Simon Omosola in the first of those games and Davis Ipasi each getting a start there, maybe giving us a hint as to who the backup keeper will be. Because those two were on the bench for the last three games. The other possible candidate, Simon, what a name he has, Simon Ngap Andu Etenbu, was on the bench for most of the games during the period, but not selected for the last three matches. So, however, all of this may be meaningless because under the new manager, the brand new manager, things may change. And that's going to be true for every position, in fact. Okay, let's look at the candidates then. Simon Omosola as a definite candidate, not because he's a starter, but because he has been on the bench for 15 of the 18 or 15 of the 16 matches, and he started the other one, so consistently called up. Omosola is the player playing in Congo DR, and he was on the squad for the 2021 African Cup, and but not just a backup player there, not selected for the World Cup or the 2023 African Cup there. So the 27-year-old, a definite candidate, but probably not the starter. But who knows under the new manager. The other definite candidate, at least according to what's happened over the last 2 years, is Andre Onana. He's been with Cameroon now since 2016 with 53 caps and is 29 years old and still on the roster for Manchester United in England since 2023, but not playing for them because he's on loan to Trabzonspor in Turkey since 2025. But he's been with top clubs, Inter Milan in Italy, Ajax in Netherlands, and Barcelona Youth Club in Spain. So really top clubs there. He's actually the cousin of Fabrice Ondoa, who he shared starts with in the recent African Cup. And he himself has been part of cups since the 2017 African Cup. He refused the call up for that one. So since the 2017 Confederations Cup. So also the starting keeper in the World Cup in 2022. However, did have disagreement with his manager during that World Cup and was sent home. Still, he was back for the African Cup in 2024 in January, and as we saw, started one of the 4 games there. Over the recent period, though, he has started 14 of the 16 games, and just missing those 2 June friendlies there. So looks like the starting keeper now. But again, under the new manager, that may change, especially since he is a bit of a controversial character and the manager is being brought in to deal with problems like that. Just putting one and one together, I might think that Onana does not look as safe as he seems to be, judging by his participation. But that's just speculation. We'll have to see. Let's move on to the possible candidates. And we have Davis Opasi. He's French-born and has been part of African Cup since 2021, selected for all of them, actually. And in the World Cup, he started on the bench, but gained a starting position after Andre Onana was sent home there. However, he was off the team for a bit after the African Cup. He returned in March of 2025 and started one game there. and basically on the bench for most of the matches since then. So he is a possible candidate here, judging by the last three matches, definitely. But again, new manager. Next, we have Simon Ngap Anduetenbu. And he also was on the bench for the World Cup in 2022 and the last African Cup, a backup keeper there. He's just 22 years old and plays for Montpellier in France. But as we saw, he was on the bench for most of the games, 12 of them over the period, but not selected for the last three matches, or last two matches, I should say. I may have included some November information there to make it three matches. But yes, that makes him a bit less likely. So, and then we have Fabrice Ondoa, seemingly off the squad. We won't go into detail on him, but he has been a starter ever since the 2015 African Cup, kind of battling along with Onana for the starting position. And a couple of tournaments he wasn't selected for, but most significantly dropped from the team after the last African Cup. So the January 2024 was his last appearance for the team. Again, he might come back in under the new manager. We can't be sure. Okay, that's it for goalkeepers. Let's move on to the defense and begin with central defenders. So just a reminder that in most of the games, all but one of the games over this period, it is a two-man central defense, just one game where it's a three-man central defense. But we're going to see in the Cup that there were a couple of games where they used the three-man system. Candidates then, we have at the possible level, Michael Ngaju. We're just going to call him Michael Ngaju here. And so no definite candidate. He's the first of three likely candidates, though. The second is John Charles Castelletto. John Charles Castelletto. And the third one, Christopher Wu. I heard his name was pronounced Woe by at least one commentator in the last Cup, but I'm going to stick with Wu because I think that's right, but I'm not dead sure. Anyway, Christopher Wu, the third of the likely candidates. We also have three possible candidates here. The first one is Enzo Boyomo, and then we have Junior Cotto Samuel, and finally Guy Marcelin Kalami. Make that Guy Marcelin Kalama. One candidate at the possible but unlikely level, that is James Njungu or Njungue. And then two candidates seemingly off the squad, Umar Gonzalez and Harold Mukudi. And in addition to not participating recently, he is an injury concern too. Okay, those are the candidates. Let's look at the position over the period there. Going into the previous tournament, we had not made a firm prediction of starters, but we did feel it would be a rotation among three players, Christopher Wu, Umar Gonzalez, and Harold Mukudi. It turned out it was a rotation. And then in the final game, all three of them played in a three-man backline there. Wu started all four of the games. However, Gonzalez and Mukudi were out under new manager Mark Breeze, and Michael Ngaju was recalled, having been off the squad under the manager Rigobert Song. Ngaju and Wu became a solid partnership for the rest of 2024. 2025, though, was a bit more unsettled. Really, they didn't play March games, and the June games were experimental, so there's not much to talk about there. We're looking more at the fall games in 2025. And both of those players, Ngaju and Wu, joined a rotation that also included Castanello, who actually had played as a starting right back in the Cup, and newcomer Enzo Boyomo. So all four of those players had starts over the last four games in the fall of 2025. And then in both of the October games, left back Nuhu Tolo became a starter, even though it was just a two-man backline. So kind of five candidates to consider there. Let's take a look at the candidates we have here. So Michael Ngaju, or Michael Ngaju, been with Cameroon since 2016 with 55 caps, 5 goals too. That's pretty good for a central defender. He is 35 years old though, and he plays for Beijing Guan in China. He's been there since 2023. And he's been part of African Cup since the 2017 African Cup. However, a bit surprisingly not selected for the World Cup in 2022. He was a definite candidate going into that, according to us at least. And then, as we saw, kind of off the squad under Rigobert Song, so not selected for the 2023 African Cup either. However, he's back and he started 10 of their 16 games in Gadjui. And he started 10 and was on the bench for one. Just 5 matches that he was not selected for. That includes the last match. But again, not something we need to interpret that much because there's a new manager coming in. Next, we have John Charles Castelletto. He was born in France. He's 2017 was his first cap for the national team. He now has 34 caps and 2 goals. He's 30 years old. Recently moved to Al Duhai in Qatar. Qatar is the way it's supposed to be pronounced, since 2025. So was with Nantes in France for 5 years before that. His first tournament, despite being on the team since 2017, was in 2021. But he has been part of the 3 tournaments, the 2021 and 23 African Cups and the World Cup in the middle there. He was just started not the first game in the 2021 African Cup, but a few of the games, 3 of the games. Started and finished games 1 and 2 in the World Cup, but out with injury for the 3rd game, and started and finished all 4 games as a right back in the last African Cup. Over this period, he started only 5 of their 16 games, though, and he was subbed in for 3, on the bench for 1. Injured for a couple of matches there, but not selected only for 5 matches. So we do consider him a likely candidate here. We should have put Christopher Wu at the top of the list here. I think I'll change that. Because he's the most likely here. Wu has been with Cameroon since 2022. He's quite young, 24 years old, but he has 23 caps and 2 goals for the team. He recently moved to Spartak Moscow in Russia in 2025, having been with Reims in France. Before that, he was born in France, and the World Cup in 2022 was his first competition. He started and finished game 3 there, the only game he played in. And as we saw, started all 4 games, the only central defender to start all 4 games in the last cup. Christopher Wu started 9 of their 16 games over the period, as well as subbing in for 1. He was not selected for 6, though, and that includes 5 of the last 6 matches. He did actually start one of those fall 2025 games, but didn't get selected otherwise since March, I guess, of 2025. However, well, maybe we should move him down to possible on that basis. At least it explains why he's at the bottom of the likely list. I think we'll leave him where he is, though, because he may be reinstated, as it were, under the new manager. I suspect he will be. Let's go to the 3 likely candidates, beginning with Enzo Boyomo. And we saw him come in at the end, so effectively replacing Wu there. At the end, Boyomo is 24 years old. He does have caps. He started 6 of their games then, and Six of their games over the period. Sorry, I'm a little lost because I had him as no caps, but of course he got some caps at the end there. Boyomo was born in France and plays for Osasuna in Spain since 2024 and Real Valladolid prior to that. So good affiliations there. He was on the preliminary squad for the previous African Cup, actually, but didn't make the final cut, and returned after a 19-month absence because he hadn't played games, again, to start 6 of their remaining 12 games, and was on the bench for 4 others. However, he was not selected for the last 2 matches, so that's why we have him as just a possible candidate here. Next, we'll go a bit faster because these players are less likely than Boyomo. Junior Koto Samuel is 22 years old, no caps for the national team. He plays for Ghent in Belgium, also on the preliminary squad for the last cup, but just came in right at the end there, appearing on the bench for the last game in October of 2025. Guy Marcelin Kilama, been with the team since 2024. He has 5 caps there and plays for Hatayspor in Turkey since 2023. And he got his first cap in September 2024 and did start 1 game as well as subbing in for 4. And was on the bench for 5 besides, but not selected for the last 4 matches. So a possible candidate here, especially since things might change under the new manager. James Njungwe is just at the possible but unlikely level. He didn't start any games during the period, was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 1, and not selected for the last 4 matches. So we have him possible but unlikely. Umar Gonzalez and Harold Makudi, we saw both of them starting in the cup there. Both of them have not been called up since, though. In the case of Gonzalez, the cup was his last appearance for the national team. Makudu did continue until June of 2024, but that was his last game. So again, these players may come back into the picture. Let me just check their ages. 27 for Gonzalez and 28 for Makudu. So definitely young enough to come back in. And we'll introduce them in part 2 if they actually are named to the squad. We'll introduce them in more detail. All right, that's it for central defenders. Let's move on to left backs here. And here we have a definite candidate in Nuhu Tolo. We saw him starting as a central defender in the last 2 games there. At the likely level, we have Mamadou Abubakar Nagida. And then at the possible but unlikely level, the starter in the last cup, Darlin Yonghwa. All right, let's look at what's happened over the period. In fact, we were confident that Darlin Yonghwa would start in the last cup, and so he did. We also thought Nuhu Tolo might start somewhere else on the field. Because he sometimes does start as a central defender, especially in a 3-man central defense. It turns out that in the left back position, they did rotate. And in game 3, both of them were on the field. Tolo did play as a central defender in a 3-man defense that game, while Yonghwa pushed up to the left wing, as left backs generally do when there's a 3-man defense. After the cup, Tolo took command of the position, though, while Yonghwa got no starts and was barely used. Tolo missed only 3 games over the period, and instead of being replaced by Yonghwa, he was replaced by newcomer Mahamadou Abubakar Nagida. Nagida actually started the last 2 games as well, but Tolo was on the field, as we saw, playing as a central defender, though in a 2-man central defense there. Anyway, all of that may not matter under the new manager, but it looks, from what we see there, up to October, Tolo was the main candidate there, and Nagida rather than Yonghua, the backup. Let's look at the candidates here. Nuhu Tolo has been with Cameroon since 2017 with 44 caps and 1 goal. He's 28 years old and one of 4 players playing in the United States with Seattle Sounders. That's one of the bigger teams there, and he's been with them since 2017. I wonder if playing in the USA will actually give him a better chance to make the squad for the World Cup next time, since it's being played in the USA. Tolo has been part of the tournament squad since the 2021 African Cup, a starter in the 2021 and 2022 World Cup, 2021 African Cup, and then the following World Cup. Started on the bench for game 1 in 2023, but as we saw, rotated in the position there. And over the recent period has taken command of the position with 13 starts of the 16 games, on the bench for 1 and not selected for 2 matches there, probably those 2 June friendlies in 2025. Mahamadou Abubakar Nagida is just 20 years old and new to the squad. He does have 6 caps though, plays for Reims in France. And again, he was on the preliminary squad for the previous cup, but actually got his first cap. He didn't make the final cut there. Got his first cap in June of 2025 and started 5 of the remaining 6 games and was on the bench for 1 other. There we go. That is Mahamadou Abubakar Nagida. And then Darlin Yonghua has been with Cameroon since 2022 with 10 caps and 1 goal. He's 25 years old, plays for Lorient in France, and as we saw, a rotating starter back in the cup. But we also said in the narrative, not used much over the position, just 2 appearances as a substitute there and not selected for 12 matches, including the last 4. So Darlin Yonghua, out of the picture, but again, the new manager may come back to him. Let's go over to right backs, and we begin by nominating the candidates. For the definite candidate, we have a newcomer. It's Jackson Chachu. And we have no candidates at the possible level, but at the likely level, but at the possible level, we have Malcolm Bokele, Junior Chamadou, and Joyce Dawa. And then possible but unlikely, we have Faye Collins. Collins Faye is his name. And then seemingly off the squad, Enzo Chato. Okay, those are the candidates. Let's look at the story. In fact, going into the previous African Cup, there had been no strong candidate for right back. And so central defender Jean-Charles Castanello had been playing in the position. We thought he would continue to do so in the Cup, and so he did. He started all 4 games there. New manager Breeze brought in newcomer Jackson Chachu, who took command of the position immediately. He only missed the June 2025 friendlies and then the first game in September of 2025. For that one, he was on the bench. For the friendlies, he was not called up. Replacing him in those 3 games were 3 different players. None of them were among the candidates I've listed for right back here. And Castelletto was not replacing either. All of them were out of position players, including, most strangely, the forward Mumu Ngamalu for one of those games. So still looks like this position of right back is a bit of a problem, although Chachu does seem to be the solution. Let's look at the players here. Jackson Chachu then, with Cameroon since 2014, but 13 caps already and just 24 years old. He plays for Wolverhampton in England. That's a recent move in 2025 from Hellas Verona, who he was with a year before that, and Charleroi in Belgium up until 2024. He was born in Belgium, Chachu, and he got his first cap in June of 2024. As we saw, took over the position immediately, starting 13 of the games. Malcolm Bokele is at the possible level. He is 25 years old and plays for Göztepe in Turkey since 2024 and Bordeaux in France prior to that. And he was selected for the African Cup in 2023, but just didn't see any action in that tournament, nor did he see any action over the 16 games here. He was just, he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 5, not selected for 11 others, Malcolm Bokele. Junior Chamadou does have 5 caps for the national team since 2023. He's 22 years old and he was born in England and plays for Stoke in England since 2023. And he too was selected for the previous cup but not used. He was used. He subbed into games 1 and 2 there. Over the recent period, though, he was off the team for most of the time. But returned right at the end in October of 2025 and was on the bench for the last game. So Junior Chamadou kind of up in the air. When players come in at the end like that, we don't know whether they're being seriously considered. The other possible candidate is Joyxim Dawa. He's actually been with the team for a long time, since 2018, but only has 10 caps. He's 29 years old and plays for FCSB in Romania. That's the new name for Steaua Bucharest. There, he's been over there in Eastern Europe for quite a while, in Romania, Latvia, and Ukraine. He was born in France, Joyxim Dawa, and was selected for the 2019 African Cup there, but none of the 3 cups since then. In fact, he returned after a 3.5-year absence in March of 2025. Didn't start any games, but was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 1, and then injured for the last 6 matches. So he is an injury concern. He's out with torn knee ligaments from late March 2025. So just as soon as he got back on the squad here, he went out with injury. He's expected back on January 10th, 2026. So that's going to be too late. We'll review that in section 3. Let's look at Faye Collins, a very experienced player for Cameroon with 56 caps since 2012. The biggest problem for Faye Collins right now is that he's not attached to any team. So he was with a team in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 2025, but hasn't found a club since then. So we won't go through all of his information, but he's been selected for most cups, though not the 2023 African Cup. He did come back and play after the period, but just on the bench there. Actually on the bench for 11 of the games, and not selected for 5 others, including the last 4 matches. So still in the picture, Collins Faye. And then seemingly off the squad is Enzo Chato. And he was selected for the previous African Cup, but that was his last appearance for the squad. So Enzo Chato seemingly off the squad. He's only 23 years old, though. So again, things may change under the new manager. That is it for the defense. And we're going to move on up to the midfield. And here we're going to start with a versatile midfielder. Really, he's only there because we had him there last time. So prior to the previous African Cup, he seemed to be all over the field. Here, though, he really just has been playing as a central midfielder, but we'll keep him in this category. He's a likely candidate, and it's Frank Zambo Anguissa, sometimes called Andre Frank Zambo Anguissa. I'm just going to call him Zambo Anguissa. He is an injury concern, though. and we'll talk about that a bit later. We're just populating the list here. So he is one of the names on the list, and we're going to go through defensive and central midfielders and do them all in one gulp. So let's go on to players coded as defensive midfielders. And no definite candidate there either, but two at the likely level, Martin Hongla and Carlos Baliba. And then two at the possible level, Ivan Neu and Willity Yunusa. And then two seemingly off the squad. These are both newcomers, as their name in orange indicates to YouTube viewers. The first possible but unlikely is Fidel Bryce Ambina, and the other is Martin Nzi. Martin Nzi. Finally, let's look at the list for central midfielders. Yikes, we're dealing with a lot of players here. But I will remind you that we're filling basically three positions here because they often use a three-man central midfield. Again, no definite candidate for players coded as central midfielders, but at the likely level we have newcomer Arthur Avom, or Arthur Ebong. I've seen him listed by both names there. He is at the likely level, and at the possible level we have Jean Onana, who is also an injury concern. Possible but unlikely, Boris Inau and James Eto. A lot of these names are coming from those June friendlies where they tried out some new players. We have three players seemingly off the squad as well. Ben Elliott, Olivier Kemen, and Pierre Kunde. Kemen's name will come up in the narrative there. Oh, we have one more as well. Olivier Cham. Yikes, that's an awful lot of candidates. Okay, let's look at the narrative of the situation. So we didn't cover it in section one, but now we'll say that the midfield is, let me see, often a three-man midfield here. Sorry, I thought I had written it here, but I got to go back to section one and look. A three-man midfield in, well, we'll just say almost half of the games here. I'm just seeing if it's, no, more than half of the games, 63% of the games, we have a three-man midfield. So we're covering a lot of positions here. Let's look at the situation. So going into the previous tournament, the only starter we were really sure about was Frank Zambo-Anguissa, and he did start all four of the games. We thought the next most likely candidate was Olivier Cham, and he did start three of them. But Olivier Kemen played a bigger role than we expected by starting the first two matches. However, both of those, Cham and Olivier Kemen, were both off the squad quite quickly under the new manager, Mark Brees. Zambo-Anguissa, though, remained and was a staple in the midfield, but he did miss some games in the middle of the period. Martin Hongla enjoyed a revival in his international career and started most games, though less so in 2025, and he was on the bench for the last two games. Newcomer Carlos Baliba joined, and then the three of them, Anguissa, Hongla, and Baliba, were a steady partnership in the early part of the period. Most of the players in 2025 had fleeting appearances of one or perhaps two games. The only kind of newcomer that kind of established himself was Arthur Avom, or Arthur Ebong. He basically joined the rotation meaningfully at the end. He started 5 of their 6 games there. 4 of their 5 games. there. So we have Anguissa, Hongla, Baliba, and Ebong in a rotation. Okay, let's look at the candidates here, beginning with the versatile midfielder, Zambo Anguissa. He's been with Cameroon since 2017 and has 67 caps now and 5 goals. And he is 30 years old. He plays for Napoli in England. And been part of tournaments since the 2017 Confederation Cup. He too refused to call up for the 2017 African Cup, but did play in the Confederations Cup a bit later that year. And as I said, has been part of every tournament since, and as a starter in all of them. Zambo Anguissa started 10 of their games over this period, subbed in for one and was on the bench for one. Just 4 matches that he wasn't selected for. So we have him as a likely candidate here. Also likely is the first of our players coded as defensive midfielders, Martin Hongla. And yes, he was off the team under Rigobert Song, but returned on after a 15-month absence in June of 2024 and started 12 of their remaining games there, and on the bench for 2. So just 2 matches he was not selected for. So I describe that as kind of a revival of his career in the narrative. He's been with Cameroon since 2020 with 35 caps and 1 goal, and is 27 years old. Hongla plays for Granada in Spain since 2024, and Hellas Verona in Italy prior to that, and has been part of the 2021 African Cup and a starter in the 2022 World Cup, but not selected again under Rigobert Song for the previous Cup. So Martin Hongla back in the picture here. Next, we have newcomer Carlos Baliba. He's been with Cameroon since 2024. He got his first cap in June and has 10 starts under the 10 starts during this period, on the bench for 1 and not selected for 5 others. Carlos Baliba is only 21 years old and is playing for Brighton in England since 2023. So Carlos Baliba, an exciting young prospect. Here, the first of our 2 possible candidates for defensive midfielders is Ivan Neu, and we have so many candidates, I'm not going to give much detail on these players. He started 1 of their games over the period, subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2, but not selected for 10 matches, including the last 2. So Ivan Neu, just a possible candidate. Willity Unisa is a newcomer since 2025. He got 2 caps over the period since his first appearance in November 2024 on the bench. So started 1 and subbed in for 1. Not selected for the last 2 matches, though. He's 24 years old, Willity Yunusa. So he will hope to get into the team going forward more. The first of our possible but unlikely candidates, also 24 years old with no caps, is Fidel Bryce Ambina, and just came in at the end. He was on the bench for 1 match in October of 2025 and then not selected for the last one. Martin Nzi, also possible but unlikely, came in October of 2024. He did start 1 match, but he was not selected for 7 of the matches, including the last 3. All right, so those are the less likely candidates. We'll go to players coded as central midfielders, and we will take a look at newcomer Arthur Avom, or Arthur Ebong, because of all of these newcomers. He's the one who has made the most traction. In fact, he started 1 game as a left forward, 1 of his 5 games, because he had 5 caps, all of them in 2025. And he's 21 years old, playing for Lorient in France. and he did get his first appearance on the bench in November 2024, but as I said, his 5 starts were in 2025. Besides those, he was on the bench for 3 and not selected for 2. So looking positive, but again, things may be different under the new manager. Gino Nana is a possible candidate here. He actually was out with muscular problems for the November playoff match. Um, but he was on the bench for his club team before the end of the month. So doesn't look like his injury is a problem. Onana has been with Cameroon since 2020. He's 25 years old, playing for Besiktas in Turkey, currently on loan to Genoa in Italy, and was part of the African Cup 2021 squad, but not selected for the 2 tournaments after that, the World Cup in 2022 and the last African Cup. And Onana came back after a 2.5-year absence in June of 2025. He started 2 games. Those were both the June friendlies, the kind of experimental / B team squads, though, and then he was not selected in the fall of that year. So I would almost put him as an unlikely candidate. 2 other newcomers, or 2 newcomers. Onana is Gino Onana's not a newcomer. He has tournament experience. But 2 newcomers at the possible but unlikely level. The first one is Boris Inau. He's 25 years old and plays for DC United in the United States, a pretty good club there, and got his first appearance on the bench in September 2024 and was subbed in for 1 game there, but was not selected for the last 4 matches. The other one, the other candidate, James Eto'o, James Eto'o, as in Samuel Eto'o. I don't know if he's related, though. He's playing for CSKA Sofia in Bulgaria. CSKA Sofia in Bulgaria, was with a different Bulgarian team before that. He got 1 substitution appearance over the period, but not selected for the last 4 matches. Okay, and then I think I'm just going to, because we have so many candidates here, leave some of the seemingly off the squad players just as names. So the first one is Ben Elliott. I can't resist. He was part of the 2023 African Cup squad on the bench there, and that was his last appearance. However, the Olivier Kemen came up in the narrative there. He started games 1 and 2 in that African Cup, but hasn't appeared since then, since January 2024. Pierre Koundé, a quite experienced player for the team, last appeared for the national team in October of 2024. And Oliver Nacham also came up in the narrative. He's been part of the last 2 tournaments as a sub in the World Cup 2022 and as a starter in 3 of the 4 games in the last Cup. He did last a little while after the Cup, but September 2024 was Olivier Cham's last appearance. So there we go. We have covered the midfielders. No, not quite. We have 1 more to cover. Even though they do use a 4-3-3 formation, which has a left midfielder and a right midfielder, it's covered by the players that we've talked about so far. So we don't necessarily distinguish left and right midfielders anymore. However, we do have 1 candidate who's coded as a right midfielder, and he's just at the possible but unlikely level. So we'll deal with him quickly here. He is newcomer Boris Mfumu, and he started. He came in June 2025 and started 1 of those friendlies, but not selected in the fall. So we will talk about him more if he's selected for the final squad. Meanwhile, we're going to move on to left or to the attacking midfield, and we're going to begin with left attackers. So in a 4-3-3 formation, this would be a left forward, but in other formations, 4-2-3-1 is a left attacking midfield, and a 4-4-2 a left winger. We combine all of those into one category called left attackers. So let's take a look and see who we have up here. We have George Kevin Nkudu, who is coded as a left attacker. I only say that because the other players we have here are mostly not coded that way. We have Christian Basagog. He's actually right attacking midfielder / forward. He is at the likely level also. I think I have in my mind Mumi Ngamalu playing over here as well, but he plays all over the field, so I don't have him on the list here. We'll cover him when he gets to forward. What we do have on the list here, beyond those two likely candidates, is a possible but unlikely candidate, Hamadou Mubarak, and then we have seemingly off the squad Clinton Njayi. So let's take a look at the situation. This position actually was a bit of a mess going into the last cup, with mostly out of position players coming in and filling it, especially forwards there. We had Carl Toko Ikambi and Mumu Ngamalu as potential starters as our predictions going into the last cup. Potential starters, but we couldn't nominate a definite candidate. We were wrong anyway, because it was George Kevin Nkudu, one of the few players actually coded as a left attacking midfielder. Nkudu starting all 4 games in the cup. So our predictions were hopelessly wrong there. Christian Basagog was out for more than a year under manager Rigobert Song, but he stormed back into the picture under Mark Breeze, playing 6 games in a row, most of them in the fall of 2024, those African Cup qualifying games. After that, though, Basagog did drift out of the position, and in the September 2025 games, Nkudu returned and played all 4 of them. As I kind of said, Mumu Ngamalu did start in the position once, and actually often came in as a substitute into this position. We don't really talk about that here. We're more focused on starters, but Ngamalu's name is kind of associated with this position to some degree. Okay, let's look at George Kevin Ndudu. So Nkudu, he started in the cup and then started in the fall 2025 games. So he's been with Cameroon just since, that can't be right, 2023, because he was part of the World Cup in 2022. So I'm not sure when he started, but he has 18 caps and 3 goals and is 30 years old. Recently moved to a club in Saudi Arabia that I'm not really familiar with, Al Diriyah, since 2025. But up until 2023 was with Besiktas in Turkey, and prior to that played for Tottenham and Monaco and Marseille. So a pretty good resume, although the club he's with now is not that big of a club. Nkudu was part of the World Cup in 2022. He subbed into a couple of games there. And then, as we saw, a starter in the last African Cup. And over the period, Nkudu started 5 of their 16 games there. He was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3. So basically, after the Cup, he was not... didn't feature much, but then came back towards or right at the end of the period to start 4 games. Christian Basagog was the guy in the position after the Cup, and let's take a look at him. He's 30 years old, and he's been with Cameroon since 2016. 56 caps and 8 goals for him. And he also plays in Saudi Arabia for one of their lesser clubs, Al Oqdoud, since 2024. And he's a bit of a world traveler. He's played in Turkey, in China, and in the USA as well, Christian Basagog. First tournament for him was the 2017 African Cup, and he's been part of all tournaments since then. A starter actually in the 2017, but more and more became a substitute until finally in 2023 he was not selected for a tournament. However, he came back in a big way, starting 9 of their 16 games over this period, subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2. So just 2 matches he was not selected for. But again, will that continue under the new manager? We don't know. So Christian Basagog, though, we have him as a likely candidate based on his participation over the period. Hamadou Mubarak is a newcomer since 2025. He's got 1 goal and is 19 years old and plays for Villarreal's C team, not their B team, but their C team. And he just had 1 appearance as a substitute, was not selected for the last 4 matches. We'll talk about him more if he makes the final squad. Finally, Clinton Njai, kind of in and out of the team over the years, all the way back to 2014. I don't know if we've met anyone yet that played in the 2015 African Cup, but he did there. And as I say, in and out over the period. He was selected for the 2023 African Cup, but that was his last appearance. So Clinton Njai, still just 32 years old, but probably not going to be making a big comeback here because he's not attached to any club currently. All right, those are the left attackers. Let's move on over to the right side. And we have a definite candidate here in Brian Mbeumo. We have 2 possible candidates here, Patrick Soko and Nathan Ngumu. Nathan Ngumu, an injury concern there. We'll come back to that. Let's take a look at the summary of the position. So going into the last cup, Brian Mbeumo was almost anointed as a starter. However, he was injured. So we didn't know who to predict. He had been in the position for most of the time. We thought it would have to be a forward coming back to play in the position, but we didn't know which forward. So we kind of nominated Abubakar probably as the most likely forward. It turned out Abubakar was injured for the first 3 games anyway. It was 3 different players in the group stage, but in game 3 it was Carl Toko Akambi, and he also started game 4. Mbeumo returned from his injury in March of 2024 there, and was the main player in this position throughout the period. However, there were 5 games that Mbeumo didn't start. Those were the November 2024 African Cup qualifiers, and replacing him there was Mumu Ngamalu. I'm going to call him a versatile attacker here, and Christian Basagog replacing him. In the June 2025 friendlies, those were experimental / B team games, and it was Patrick Soto playing both of those games. Those were Soto's only starts there. Only starts over the period. And Gamalu Mbeumo was also on the bench for one of the games in October of 2025. So Ngamalu replaced him there too. So Ngamalu proving kind of very versatile. Okay, let's look at Brian Mbeumo. He's been with Cameroon since 2022 with 14 caps and 3 goals. He's 26 years old and recently moved to Manchester United in England since 2025 and was with Brentford in England for 6 years before that. He was born in France, though, so before going to Brentford, he was with French teams, especially Troyes there. And he was a starter in the World Cup in 2022. That was his first tournament. But as we saw, he was injured for the previous African Cup there. Over the recent period, Mbeumo started 11 of their 16 games, subbed in for 1 and not selected for 4, as we covered in the narrative. So Mbeumo, a definite candidate here. We actually do have Christian Basagog. He's coded as a right midfielder. We saw him replace Mbeumo in one game, but mostly he's been on the left, so we moved him over there. That leaves us with our 2 possible candidates, Patrick Soko, and he has new to the team since 2024. He's got 4 caps. 2 of them starts in the June friendlies and then subbed in for 2 games. However, he was not selected for the last 4 matches. We'll see if he makes any headway under the new manager. The other possible candidate, Nathan Ngumu, appeared twice as a substitute over the period, but he too was not selected for the last 4 matches. And he's with Borussia Mönchengladbach in Germany, and prior to that was with Toulouse in France, so pretty good club affiliations. However, he's been injured, struggling with injury throughout the period. An Achilles tendon rupture from mid-April of 2025, so a long-term injury this one, and not expected back until December 31st. We'll talk about the significance of that when we get to part 3. Anyway, that is the right attackers. Brian Mbeumo hopefully won't get injured prior to coming into this cup. And let's look at players coded as central attackers. And here at the possible level is our first candidate. It is veteran Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting. Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting, he's just at the possible level. And also at the possible level, Danny Namaso. Danny Namaso is coded as a forward, but we moved him here because his only start was over here. Let's take a look at the position, actually. This position of central attacking midfielder only exists in a 4-2-3-1 formation. Cameroon used that formation 3 times over the period. All of them were in 2025. And Danny Namaso got his only start there. Again, he's coded as a forward, but played as a central attacking midfielder. In the June 2025 friendly, well, that was the experimental game, and an unfamiliar player appeared in the position there. And when it was used again in September 2025, it was Arthur Ayon or Arthur Ibong stepping into the position. All right, we'll take a look at these candidates. Choupo-Moting, we won't go into too much detail because he has a very long resume here. 76 caps and 20 goals for the national team. He's playing in America now. He was with Bayern Munich in Germany from 2020 to 24 and then moved to New York Red Bulls in the USA. He's been in tournaments since the 2010 World Cup, but he wasn't selected for the African Cup in 2023, and but did return afterwards. He returned after a 2-year absence in June of 2024, and he started a game. Started as a co-forward in one of the few games where they used a double forward. Started a game and was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 2. But not selected for 12 of the matches. So Choupo-Moting, again, not really getting his foot back in the door here, but a little bit. The second possible candidate is Danny Namaso. Well, he's 25 years old, so not that young, but got his first start in March or his first cap in March of 2025 here, and has 5 caps now. He plays for Porto in Portugal since 2021, is currently on loan to Auxerre in France since 2025. Namaso was born in England and joined the team in March 2025. He started 1 game and subbed in for 4. And so is a possible candidate here, just making good inroads at the end. And that is it for central attackers. And we move on to our last category. No, second last category, because we do have a player coded as a secondary striker. However, he is off at the seemingly off the squad level. It's Lionel Atiba. He was selected for the African Cup last time around there, but that was his last appearance for the team. So Atiba seemingly off the squad. Now we can go to our last category, which is forwards. And let's look at the candidates here. We have Vincent Abubakar. He is a definite candidate. We have likely candidates, Frank Magri, Mumu Ngamalu, who we've seen starting all over the field, even as a right back. And then we have newcomer Carl Etta Eong. Then we have a possible candidate in Ignatius Ganago. He's an injury concern. We'll come back to that. And then we have 2 seemingly off the squad candidates, Serge Daura. No, not seemingly off the squad, possible but unlikely. These are probably players from the June 2025 experimental match. Serge Daura, and the other is Jean Batum. And finally, a couple of players who are seemingly off the squad, Faris Mumbagna and Carl Toko Ikambi. There. Okay, that is a lot of players. Let's take a look at the narrative over the last couple of years. Moving into the previous African Cup, we tentatively put forward Vincent Abubakar as a possible starter. We were not surprised, though, when it was Carl Toko Ikambi in the first game. But we were a little surprised when Frank Magri, who we saw as only a possible candidate for reaching the squad in our media cast before the Cup, started the last 3 games there, Frank Magri. Abubakar had actually been recovering from injury through the group stage. I don't think we really knew that at the time. So ultimately had not been available. But Abubakar took control of the position after the Cup, starting all of the games except the experimental June 2025 friendlies there. He was just a sub in the last 2 games, though, and Carl Etta Eong, the newcomer, started both. And he was accompanied by Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting in one of those. That was Choupo-Moting's only start during the period. So Vincent Abubakar back in the driver's seat here. He's 33 years old, and he has been with the squad since 2010 with 115 caps and 45 goals. Wow. He was captain of the team. I'm not sure if he still is. But anyway, he's playing for Neftchi Baku in Azerbaijan since 2025. Had been playing for a couple of clubs in Turkey before that and in Saudi Arabia. But in his past, was with some pretty big clubs there. Porto in Portugal, and I guess Besiktas in Turkey is a pretty big club too. Al Nasser in Saudi Arabia also. He's been part of squad since the 2010 World Cup. We won't go into a lot of detail on him here. It looks like the only one he missed was the 2019 African Cup. due to a new knee injury. But we saw that injury also played a role in the 2023, the recent African Cup for him. Anyway, Abubakar has started 13 of their 16 games over the period, and he subbed in for the other three, so a definite candidate here. Frank Magri is the first of our three likely candidates. He has been with Cameroon since 2023 with 18 caps and 2 goals, and is 26 years old. He plays for Toulouse in France. Magri is French-born. The 2023 African Cup then was his first tournament. He started he started all 4 games, so he must have been in a different position for the first one there. And mathematical beauty in his recent participation. He started 4 of their 16 games, subbed in for 4, on the bench for 4, and not selected for 4. So Frank Magri, a likely candidate. Mumu Ngamalu is the next one. He is 31 years old now, playing for Dynamo Moscow in Russia for the last 3 years, and has been part of tournaments since the 2017 Confederations Cup there. He did miss the 2019 edition, and the only one he was a starter in was the 2021 edition, Ngamalu. And over the recent period, he started 5 of their 16 games, subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 1. Also almost mathematical beauty there. Started 5, subbed in for 5, and not selected for 5, but on the bench for 1. And he wasn't selected for the last match either. So in Gamalu. And then we have newcomer Carl Eta Eong, new to the team since 2025, just 22 years old with 2 caps. Plays for Levante in Spain, but recently, before that, played for Villarreal in Spain. So a little bit of a step down there. Anyway, he got his first cap right at the end there. In fact, his first 2 caps, both in the October games. So again, it'll be interesting to see whether the new manager continues that good start. Okay, next we have Ignatius Ganago at the possible level. And he's been with the team since 2019, but only 15 caps for the 26-year-old. Was part of the 2021 tournament, but not selected for the World Cup or the last African Cup there. He plays for Nantes in France since 2022, but it's currently on loan in the USA to New England Revolution since 2025. He did return after a 2-year absence in March of 2025, but was injured for the last 2 games, out with a calf injury from mid-September. So yes, we're not really sure what his situation is. Perhaps we can update it in part 2. Yes, listed as injured with an unknown return date. Okay, 2 possible but unlikely candidates. First is 19-year-old Serge Daura. Got his first cap there in 2025, but not selected for the last 4 matches. He plays in Cameroon. The other one is Jean Batum, 23 years old, 2 caps in 2025. Those are his first appearances. Plays for Ashdod in Israel, and not selected for the last 4 matches also. So just for the June friendlies, those 2, but they may offer promise in the future. The first of the seemingly off the squad candidates, Faris Mumbanga. He's been, we won't go into detail on him. He last appeared in June of 2024. I heard from the announcer in the 2023 African Cup, which he was selected for, that he was a gifted musician who can play piano with his eyes closed. So Faris Mumbanga, but hasn't been called up recently. And then perhaps surprisingly, Carl Toko Ikambi, seemingly off the squad too. He's only 33 years old and has 61 caps since 2015 for the national team. Part of every tournament since 2017, but not called up since the last African Cup. There, where he started and finished 3 of the 4 games. But again, possibly a player who will be recalled under the new manager. So that's it, our look at the candidates, and we move on to section 3. And in section 3, we want to welcome new listeners who are just listening to the short version, which we're releasing on part 1 of Cameroon's players. So we're just after finishing section 2 in the full version, where we introduce the candidates, their likelihood of making the final squad, the reasons why we think they're at the level they're at, and a bit of career information, especially on the main players. So if you're interested in that, that's what the full version is all about. But if you're just interested in knowing the names and their likelihood, you've come to the right place. We're not predicting starters here, but we will go over the likely candidates for the squad. So we have manager David Pagou coming in right at the end in December. Mark Brees released or fired. I don't know if we said. Anyway, Mark Brees, the Belgian manager, out after they lost that World Cup qualifying playoff match. So it'll be interesting to see. It may mean that everything we've predicted here or everything we've suggested here changes under the new manager. But what we have here is based on what we've seen over the last couple of years. So for goalkeepers, we have 2 definite candidates, Simon Omosola and Andre Onana. No candidates at the likely level, and 2 possible candidates, Davis Ipasi and then Simon Ungabandu Anduentbu. I've said it better during the main podcast. I've lost my touch now. Anyway, those are the goalkeeping candidates. Moving on to central defence, we have no one at the definite level, but 3 candidates at the likely level: Michael Ngadjui, Jean-Charles Castelletto, and Christopher Wood. And then 3 at the possible level: Enzo Boyomo, he's the most promising of them, Junior Koto Samuel, and Guy Marcelin Kilama. We're not going to mention candidates below that level, but in part 2, if they are selected for the squad, we will, focus on them a bit more. Left backs, we have a definite candidate in Nuhu Tolo, and then a likely candidate in Mahamadou Abubakar Nagida. Here I will mention the possible but unlikely candidate because he was a starter in the last African Cup, Darlin Yonghwa, but seems unlikely given his participation over the last 2 years. At the right back, we have newcomer Jackson Chachua as a definite candidate there. And then none at the likely level, but 3 at the possible level: Malcolm Bokele, Junior Chamadu, and Joyskin Dawa. Moving on to the defensive midfield then, we actually have a versatile midfielder, probably a central midfielder here, Andre Zambo Anguissa. He's at the likely level there. And then to players coded as defensive midfielders, none at the definite level, but 2 at the likely level. Martin Hongla making a comeback into the team, and newcomer Carlos Baliba. And then we have 2 candidates at the possible level, Ivan Neyu and Willity Yunusa. Central midfielders, we have a likely candidate in newcomer Arthur Avom, sometimes called Arthur Ebong, and then a possible candidate in Jean Onana. 2 players off the squad there are Olivier Kemen and Olivier Ncham. Both of those were starters in the last African Cup, but seemingly off the squad now, but under the new manager, players like this may come back into the picture. We have one player coded as a right midfielder. No, he's at the possible but unlikely level. We're going to skip that and go on to upfield to the attacking midfield. We look at left attackers here, none at the definite level, but two at the likely level. Georges Kevin Nkudu, he was the starter in the last cup, and Christian Basagol coming back into the team. On the right side, right attacker, Brian Mbumo is a definite candidate. He was for the last cup too, but he was injured for it, so they would love to have him back in a tournament. Brian Mbumo then at the definite level. Two possible candidates, Patrick Soko and Nathan Ngumu. And then players coded as central attackers, Eric Maxing Choupo-Moting coming back into the team just for one start over this period. And then Danny Namaso, somewhat promising candidate there. Both of those at the possible level. For secondary strikers, we move on to forwards, and we begin with definite candidate Vincent Aboubakar, still going strong at 33 years old, played a lot during this period. Three likely candidates, Frank Magri, Mumu Ngamalu, and newcomer Carl Etta-Iyong. Okay, that is our list. So we will move on to a couple of other orders of business here, beginning with big names off the squad. We'll begin with manager Rigobert Song. He was the manager during the previous African Cup, but he was let go. Again, I don't know if it was fired or exactly how it went, but no longer part of the squad. He was let go after that cup. In came manager Mark Breeze. I think it's Brys, maybe pronounced Bryce. The Belgian manager took over after the previous African Cup and managed them all the way up until December of this year, and then they let him go after he lost the World Cup 2026 qualifying playoff match against Congo DR, and that leaves them with a manager just coming in who may make big changes to the squad. Next, we have goalkeeper Fabrice Ondoa. Actually started 3 of the 4 games in the last African Cup, but not called up after that. A bit of a surprise there. We have Pierre Koundé. He has 44 caps for the national team, not a huge name for them. He wasn't selected for the last African Cup, but did come back after that to play a few games. Last appeared in October of 2024. With the exact same number of caps, Clinton Njayi, 44 caps for the national team, so not a giant for them, but he was on the squad for the last African Cup, but that was his last appearance for the national team. And Carl Toko Ekambi, maybe the biggest surprise, at least to me here. He was a starter in the last African Cup, 61 caps for the national team, so a veteran, and not called up since the Cup, the last African Cup in January of 2024. I'm just looking at the ages of these players. I'll go over them quickly. Koundé, 30 years old, Njayi, 32, Toko Ekambi, 33 years old, and Ondoa, 30 years old. So they're all in their 30s, but young enough that they could be recalled to the squad and might be under the new manager, because we're expecting some changes there. Let's go on to injuries, and we begin with right back Joyce Kim Dawa. He is out with torn knee ligaments, long-term injury there. That started back in March of 2024, and he still isn't recovered. Is expected back, but not until January 10th, 2026. So that's too late, and we'll put him out of contention. Next, probably the biggest one, Andre Frank Zambo Anguissa. He is out with a hamstring injury since late November, not expected back until February 16th of 2026. So he is also out of contention there. He was a likely candidate for us here. Next, central midfielder Jean Onana, out with muscular problems for the November playoff match there, but he was on the bench for his team even before the end of November. So Jean Onana will put him in the recovered category. He's just just a possible candidate. Also possible candidate is right attacking midfielder Nathan Ngumu, and he is out with his third injury since October 2024. This is an Achilles tendon rupture, a long-term injury from mid-April 2025. Poor fellow, but not expected back until December 31st, 2025. So that's a bit after the tournament, 10 days after the tournament begins. Cameroon probably plays their first game around Christmas Day. He's only a possible candidate. I really doubt it, but we'll say close call for him. And finally, forward Ignatius Ganago, and he is out with a calf injury from mid-September. I do have some indication that he recovered, but he's still on the injured list with an unknown return date. So perhaps we can update that in part 2. For now, we'll put him in the unknown category. Closing thoughts. Well, I'll make it snappy here because I've been mentioning it throughout, but a new manager coming in December. This manager brought in to kind of really clean up the disciplinary and political situation, a lot of infighting and fracturing in the squad. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see some changes if any of the players are kind of causing trouble. I can't help but think of Andre Onana, who had fights or, kind of battled with Rigobert Song. Even though Song is gone, players like that may not be selected. So I am expecting to see some changes even to what we predicted here, but we'll have to see, and that's what part 2 is all about. So that brings us nicely into previewing part 2, which we're going to release when the preliminary and final squads are selected. We'll be able to tell you who made it and who didn't. We'll focus on any notable non-selections, any surprise inclusions, and any new players. I'm thinking it's going to be a little bit busy for the Cameroon squad on those fronts. We'll also update any injuries, and in part 2, the difficult task of predicting starters for Cameroon, but at least we have one game in November where we can look at the starting lineup, because that was an important game. Well, it was under the old manager, so it may not matter that much. Anyway, we'll do our best in part 2 on the Spotlight review where we predict starters. Meanwhile, that brings us to the end of our mediacast here, so stay tuned for part 2. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this mediacast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.